Okay. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Author Tells. We have today with us Ankita Kulkarni. She is a very special guest for me as I have studied my master's with her in Loughborough Universities, and we were both students, and we were both studying creative writing, and that's how we met. And then we finally decided, Ankita decided to come on board and publish with Saga, and she's the writer of our latest horror release called When in a Myth. It's a series of horror short stories, essentially told in an episodic format. Some retellings of Indian myths and Indian hauntings. So yes, I'm gonna pass it on to Ankita now to tell everyone a little bit about herself and how she got into the journey of writing.
Hi, Pranika. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. I think you pretty much said everything that I would have said about myself. Just to add a bit, after I completed my masters, I decided to pursue my career in content writing. I'd actually, got a bit of an experience before I applied for masters,
Yes.
kind of like an internship. So, I thought it did work for me, and
Yeah.
I decided to continue with that career path itself, and I'm currently working as a content strategist for a digital marketing agency here in Pune called Viral Mint.
Oh, okay.
So, but that can sometimes get a little boring because it's more of a formal kind of writing. So I always wanted to continue with my work in fiction writing as well.
Correct.
So, and when I got the wonderful news that you have started your own publishing platform, it was just the opportunity I was looking for. So, so that is how I decided to publish One in a Myth, which is my upcoming book with Saga.
Yes, and we're very, very excited about this one. So, what was your first step into writing? Like, how did you know that, fiction writing or writing is something that I want to look at or explore as a career in the future?
So, going way back to my childhood, actually, my mother always encouraged me to, start reading from a very young age.
Yes,
so
that's right.
We kind of started off with my mother reading Amar Chitra Kathas to me and my brother as bedtime stories. And, I really found that interesting. And I think around when, at the age of 7 or 8, I got my first Enid Blyton book. So, it was kind of a thrill. It's not like we used to go to Crossword or go to these big bookstores before. It was just that, we used to go to our local Raddiwala.
Yeah, where you get like second-hand books, or like
we get second-hand books. So basically, like a store. So when we used to go there, I just used to browse through the books that they used to have, and that is when I picked up my first Famous Five book. And that is how my journey into fiction began, because all through childhood I read I must have read all the books that Enid Blyton has written so far. I finished the series of Famous Five. I did Secret Seven, I did Faraway Tree, Mallory Towers.
Right.
So, and then that slowly morphed into, of course, Harry Potter.
Yes, every reader's, start, I feel, was somewhere.
Touchstone.
Yeah, like that.
It's a touchstone.
Correct. Especially for our generation, for sure. Yes.
Definitely.
Sorry, I cut you off.
So, and ever since I was in school, I was kind of interested into writing short stories. So it was just that, we used to get these, you remember, they used to give us compositions,
yes,
write about
essay
this,
writing,
essay writing. So it so happened that once or twice there was this inter-school competition kind of thing, and I got a prize in essay writing, which
Oh,
boosted
wow.
my confidence because I was kind of I was the kind of student who was really horrible at maths and science. I mean,
I can relate.
really that kind of negative atmosphere. So, when I got that prize in essay writing, it really boosted my confidence. And
Yes.
it helped me understand, oh, okay, this is something that I'm really good at.
Correct.
So ever since, my early school days,
Mhm.
um, I always wanted to do something in
Something
literature and
related.
writing. So
Okay.
it was not like an impulsive decision or something that, I suddenly, on a whim that I decided to do. It was a very well thought out career path that immediately, after school, I took up arts. I did my BA in English literature. And then choosing to do an MA in creative writing was, it was something really different.
Yes,
I
that's
got
right.
a lot of rebuke from a lot of people saying that, what will you do
What will
after
you
this?
do after this? Yes, that's a very big question for anyone who's an author that in today's day
Yeah.
and age. You need another source to sort of sustain yourself. You can't, I mean, unless you're J.K. Rowling, you can't sustain yourself on what an author earns for sure. And that there is a lot of stigma around it in Indian
Yeah,
society for sure.
definitely. So it was just about, taking that leap of faith, saying, whatever
Hmm.
happens, I will make something out of it.
Yeah.
So, uh, that is how I basically got into writing. And, talking about specifically about writing horror fiction.
Yes.
So, uh, jumping from, say, J.K. Rowling to, well, my biggest inspiration for horror fiction is Stephen King.
Yes.
So, even that happened literally by chance. I mean, it was not something that I had planned in particular.
Uh-huh.
You know how when during childhood we just, like us and our cousins together, we just sit
Yes.
together and we on during
No.
holidays, we watch horror movies. So
Correct.
that had always been kind of a ritual in my house.
Uh-huh.
And I think one day when I was just browsing through our local library, I came
Uh-huh.
across Stephen King's book. I had not watched any of the movies or, even really heard about him until then. Then I just thought, okay, this looks interesting. So I just picked up the book and started reading. And as I was halfway through the book and I realized the kind of impact that, it
It
had.
had,
Like,
yes.
it is a different thing to watch a horror movie with the sound effects and the
Yes,
visual
yes,
effects and
yes.
the jump scenes and the
Correct.
scare scenes. But it is another thing to have a similar effect just through words.
Yes, for
So,
sure.
I realized that Stephen King's books kind of really stimulated your imagination
For sure.
on a different level.
Correct,
So
correct.
kind of intrigued me. I was like, this is something, it's very difficult to do it just through your words.
Exactly, exactly. Especially for a genre like horror, like what happens is when you're writing romance or something light-hearted, it's like you're in that zone. You're imagining it
Yeah,
yourself and you're
yeah,
putting it down. But for something like horror, it's quite difficult to get those scary moments or those jump
moments.
scares essentially. Yes.
Yeah. So that was something that, it just stuck in my mind. I was like, this feels like a challenge. I mean, this is something that I would really love to try because it's not easy
Yes.
to, get that kind of effect just through your words or your characters or the scenes that you're describing, and to be able to do it in a subtle way and not
Hmm.
really, give away the entire plot.
Plot,
So
yes,
by
correct.
not by describing each and every thing that is happening in the story, but just by giving subtle hints that will create that kind of anxiety and
That
atmosphere.
adrenaline rush, as we
Yeah.
say. Yes, yes, yes. Correct.
So That is how I basically decided to explore horror fiction.
Horror fiction. Nice, very nice. And so I mean, as we said, horror it's hard to write. So
Hmm.
what's your process like? Like, what was the process? Especially, I know for When in the Myth, you started writing this while you were working on your Emmy. So what
Mhm.
was the process? What was that? What was the inspiration, the idea that you said, okay, I want to write starting from here, and then how did you proceed forward?
So, as you rightly mentioned, this is a project that I've been working on for I think almost now more than 2 years, and it started off as something I decided to do for my MA thesis, just to get my degree in hand. But so this idea started off when we went on one of our class trips to this really beautiful house called Lamport Hall, which was
Yes, yes,
situated, I think, in Northamptonshire.
correct.
And the tour guide there was, giving us a tour of the house. She was telling us about the history, and she told us about the deaths that happened there, the tragedies. And, when she was narrating these stories, I just imagined those things actually
Things
happening there.
happening. Yes, yes.
And it just struck me that what if we could actually narrate the story? What if we could spin like an exciting plot around this?
Rounded, right.
So I started writing that, but then somehow, it really didn't
It
come
didn't pan
together.
out.
The characters, I couldn't connect. So I had these individual scenes in mind that I'd written down, but I was not able to, really weave it into an entire floor or a complete story. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we had one of our peer feedback sessions. And I mean, to be very honest, this was actually inspired by you because we had a peer feedback session. You
Uh-huh.
were narrating, one of your experiences when you went to visit Bhangad Fort in
Yes,
Rajasthan.
yes. I remember that.
And you were just saying that you thought that entire place had a very negative vibe. There were a few
Yes.
things that you observed, the village surrounding the fort. There were ruins, but they nothing was built in its place. And overall, when you stepped into the fort, you
Yeah.
felt really negative. So,
Correct.
after I heard that, it just stuck in my mind, and I just went online and researched a bit about Bhangar Fort and the
Mm.
kind of myths that were surrounding that
Surrounded.
place.
Correct, correct.
So I found a lot of articles and testimonies where people had mentioned saying, because I mean Bhangar Fort is said to be it's one of the most haunted places in all of Asia.
Asia, yeah, that's right.
So, there were a lot of testimonies that I found that recounted such experiences that people
Mm-hmm.
had in
Yes, correct,
Bhangar Fort.
correct.
And then, I found a story which basically touched on the origin of this myth. So, why is it that suddenly people came to talk about it being a
Bhangar Fort
haunted place?
and being, yes, correct, correct. Yes.
So, the origin of that myth, I won't really, give it away because I we want people to read the story. But
Yes.
just to give you an idea, so that origin of the story seemed really interesting. So then it just
Mm.
struck me, what if we change this a little bit and
Okay.
add a bit of a thrill to it,
Yes.
some kind of maybe a
Mystery
revenge
element, basically.
story. Yes. So that is how the first story came into being. And then I thought, there must be countless myths across India that have sprung up. I mean, they may be true, they might not be true. They may have just come out of, people going into mass hysteria and mistaking something that they had seen in the dark. Because
Correct,
most of
correct.
the myths that I found,
Hmm.
they were something that just suddenly came out of the blue.
Hmm.
not all of them had some historical significance to it.
Significance. Correct.
Yeah. So, it just kind of really intrigued me because there were so many myths that I found across India. And I just thought, we can really make beautiful stories out of these.
Stories out of it. Yes, correct.
So then that is how the entire series came into being. So I chose 10 different myths, from across India that I really found interesting, and I thought that, we could build upon. And that is how when into myth came into.
Very nice. Okay, that's yes. I think I've heard most of this story because as an editor, obviously. But yes, I'm sure our viewers will be very interested, especially those who like follow like horror stories and are very much into those myths. Essentially, like everyone has like an interesting horror story to tell about some place that they've been to or something they've heard about, so they'd be very interested to know this. And also, your research process into it, because working as your editor, I realized the intricacies that you got into while researching the bits, like for each story there's a monster, or there's some ghost, or there's something that's involved into the story. So what was that like, researching these things?
So, to be very honest, I wish I had that kind of money to visit each and every place that the myth has, come from and do the research in person. But, just to settle with the best, to do the best with what we have in hand, I actually have a few relatives who live in these places where some of these myths have emerged from. So, yes. So I, actually asked them to go and, talk to people who actually believe in these myths. And, some of them were pretty reluctant to talk about it because they thought that, it might bring evil upon them if they, talk about the subject. But it was a pretty interesting process, right? From, most of the information that I could get was through articles, through books that I read relating to these myths. I even watched a documentary on Netflix called Myths and something. I'm sorry, Myth and Monsters, I think.
Okay.
So that series talked about these different monsters across Europe, but it gave me kind of an idea into
how you
the
want
kind
to basically
line I was looking at.
Correct. That's right. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I mean, I know there's a lot of intensive research and I think the plotting was the most fun bits I had when we were working on it. And you told me, oh yeah, yes, that's this myth, and then we can do this and we can do that, and I was like, oh wow, it was just so much fun.
And the basic storyline that I was trying to capture here was that it should really stay in sync with that particular culture. So if I'm picking a myth from say southern part of India, I wanted to bring in that kind of culture, a bit of that language into the story itself, so that it'll help create that kind of atmosphere rather than just doing it straight up in English using generic names for the characters.
Yes,
so I made sure to use names that are particular for that region or that culture, and use a few words here and there to depict that if it's a village scene, then people are not going to really speak fluently in English. They want to mix a bit of the local language in English, or certain characters which are very, very typical to a village, or very, very typical to a certain area. So that is how I tried to portray the characters to keep in sync with the culture as well as the myth.
Okay, yes, that's very interesting, and I've seen that throughout. Like even when we were working things out, there were bits in native languages, which I personally was a little worried that people won't understand that. But then once we had that discussion, and to keep that authenticity of each
Mhm.
story, I think it was important. And then we said, yeah, okay, let's keep it, and we'll add a guide, or we'll add some translation, and we'll work it out. But I think that definitely enhanced the story. Yes, for sure.
There was a quote that I read by Anita Desai,
Okay.
which kind of really inspired me to keep this idea of the culture. So she said, and I quote here, "What continues to give satisfaction in fiction is the satisfaction of the familiar and not the unexpected. Is the ever new variation on old themes."
Right,
So
right.
what she's trying to say basically is, writing fiction is not just about, creating something entirely new or, just coming up with something that is absolutely out of this world. It
Correct,
can also be about, creating variations in everyday things.
correct,
So
for
things that
sure.
we are familiar with, things that people can connect with, and then giving them a new perspective to look at these things.
Correct, correct. Yes, and I completely agree because all of the stories have some roots in Indian mythology and Indian sort of backgrounds and cultures, and each story sort of brings about those retellings essentially, or different experiences from different point of views. I know there is a story from a ghost's point of view as well, which is quite interesting to
Yes.
see, like to see that sort of dynamic coming in from the
Yeah.
counterpart. So yeah, for sure,
So
definitely.
that was the purpose. So basically, to bring in as much variation as we can in these stories. So
Correct, correct,
narrating it through different perspectives and different backgrounds, different settings, different plots, different characters. So there's no similarity as such in any of the stories. The
correct.
purpose was to bring in as much variation we can so that we
Variation.
can explore different myths.
Correct. Agreed. Which is, yeah, I think that's something that the readers will thoroughly enjoy for sure. Yes. Okay. So is it safe to say then that some of it is also inspired by Stephen King's writing or his style?
It is. I don't know how much, I don't think it would be really wise to compare, but definitely it is inspired because that one, his style of writing where he slowly builds up that anxiety. Like you can feel your heart going, you can feel that chill slowly creeping through your body, and that something's going to happen. I mean, most of us, I think we are familiar with Joey and Friends putting that book
Yes.
into the freezer. So
Yes,
I was kind of
the
tempted. I was
shiny,
literally
correct.
tempted to do that, because at one point I was like, okay, no, I don't want to read. That's how scared I was. So I really liked that, you know, format or that style of his writing where he
Hmm.
doesn't really straight up give you that scare or that that horror feel. He
Feel
starts
right.
off in a very regular, and it's like he's just narrating something is going on,
Correct.
this that, and then the story keeps building,
Correct.
and something is going to happen, but
Hmm.
it's not like a straight up boom in your face.
Yes, for sure. Yes. It starts off as a normal day. Oh, everyone's happy, nothing's
Yeah.
gonna happen, and then, yeah, there you go. Someone's trapped in a basement, ready to be killed. But
So I
yes.
really liked that part, and that is what I've tried a little bit to follow in
Imbibe.
my flow of the story.
Correct. Okay, I think, wow, that was a lot of fun talking about the writing process and when in a myth. I think it's a great story. I have one last question for you. Was that did you ever get scared yourself when you were writing the story? Like, was it
Did I did. I'm not kidding, but I did, and this was a particularly kind of an eerie night.
Uh-huh.
This was when I was still, when we were still back in the UK.
Yes,
And
yes,
it
yes.
was just the night before our final thesis submission.
Correct.
And I was, completely absorbed in, proofreading the final draft and going through the minor changes, the editing. And this was, I think, around 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. And it just I don't know, maybe because I was so stressed out about the submission, or because I was really into that, and I'd been doing that work for more than, I think, 6 or 7 hours. And the light in my bedroom suddenly started flickering, and I was like, why is that happening? And
Oh gosh.
it was really, really quiet outside, and my room was, it was like a corner room in the house. So
Correct.
it anyways had that kind of scary vibe around it. But I definitely did. I don't know if it was my imagination, or if I was really sleepy, or I was stressed out, but
Right,
that
right.
night was really scary.
Oh gosh, yes. I think while reading and editing the stories as well, I had a fair share of sleepless nights. Thanks, Ankita. I have to.
I'm so glad. So I mean, it's a bit sadistic, but I'm so glad, because that kind of, it's a compliment to my writing.
Yes, it's a
Because the
testimony
stories achieve
to.
their goal.
Correct, correct, for sure. And I hope we keep a few of the readers up at night as well. So,
Definitely.
okay, I think that was really, really great. I had a lot of fun chatting with you, Ankita, and thank you so much for doing this interview. I
Thank you
hope
so much,
the
Pranika.
readers enjoy the When in a Myth, and it will be coming soon on the app. And stay tuned, everyone.